In just 47 seconds, what started as a simple question about Hollywood turned into an absolute explosion that ended with one of the biggest stars in America walking off the set. Voices raised, fingers pointed, and curse words flying as Joy Behar and Mark Wahlberg went head-to-head in a battle that nobody saw coming. This is the story of last night's episode that has everyone talking. The studio lights were bright and hot as Mark Wahlberg sat down on the couch. He was there to talk about his new movie, dressed in a casual button-down shirt and jeans. The audience clapped loudly when he walked out, smiling and waving. He seemed relaxed, happy to be there. The other hosts greeted him warmly, asking about his family and his latest projects. Everything seemed normal. Joy Behar sat at the table with her notes in front of her. She had that look in her eyes, the one that regular viewers know means she's got something brewing. Mark answered questions about his workout routine, his restaurant chain, and his kids. He was funny and charming, making the audience laugh with stories about his life in Boston and how his wife keeps him grounded. "So Mark," one of the other hosts said, "you've had such an incredible journey from your early days to becoming this huge movie star. What's the secret?" Mark smiled. "Honestly, it's been about staying true to who I am. I came from a tough neighborhood in Boston, and I never forgot where I came from. My faith, my family. Those are the things that matter most to me." The audience clapped again. Everything was going smoothly. Too smoothly. Joy leaned forward, tapping her pen on the table. "That's interesting you mentioned faith, Mark. Because you're pretty open about being Catholic, right?" "Yeah, absolutely," Mark said, nodding. "My faith is a huge part of my life. It's gotten me through some really tough times." Joy's expression changed slightly. "But you support some pretty conservative views, don't you? Traditional values, you've said." Mark shifted in his seat a little. "I believe in what I believe in. Yeah. I think family values are important. I think faith is important. That's just how I was raised. Even when those views clash with what a lot of people in Hollywood believe?" Joy pressed, her voice getting a bit sharper. The other hosts glanced at each other. You could feel something changing in the air, like a storm cloud rolling in. Mark's smile got tighter. "Look, Joy, I respect that people have different opinions. That's what makes this country great. But I'm not going to apologize for my beliefs." "Nobody's asking you to apologize," Joy said. But her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm just curious how someone in Hollywood can hold such conservative positions on things like women's rights and social issues, while claiming to be this good guy from Boston." The audience got very quiet. This wasn't a friendly conversation anymore. Mark sat up straighter. "Wait, hold on. What are you trying to say exactly? Because it sounds like you're putting words in my mouth." "I'm not putting words anywhere," Joy shot back. "You've been pretty vocal about certain things. You went to that Catholic men's conference and talked about traditional marriage, traditional gender roles. How do you square that with working in an industry that celebrates diversity and progress?" Mark's jaw clenched. "I can have my personal beliefs and still respect other people, Joy. They're not mutually exclusive. Just because I believe certain things doesn't mean I hate anybody or judge anybody." "But you do judge," Joy insisted. "When you stand up at conferences and talk about traditional this and traditional that, you're making a statement about what you think is right and wrong." One of the other hosts tried to jump in. "Maybe we should—" "No, let him answer." Joy cut her off. "I think the audience wants to know where Mark really stands." Mark's face was getting red now. "You know what, Joy? This is exactly the problem with people like you. You can't stand it when someone doesn't think exactly the way you do. I came here to talk about my movie, to have a good time, and you're trying to turn this into some kind of political ambush." "People like me?" Joy's voice went up a notch. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means people who think they have all the answers," Mark said, his voice rising too. "People who think if you don't agree with their worldview, there's something wrong with you. I'm allowed to have my beliefs, Joy. That's called freedom." Joy laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "Freedom? You want to talk about freedom? How about the freedom of women to make choices about their own bodies? You've been pretty quiet on that front, haven't you?" "I'm not quiet about anything," Mark fired back. "I've been very clear about my personal beliefs, but I also understand that I don't make decisions for other people. That's between them and God." "Oh, there we go with the God talk again," Joy said, rolling her eyes. "It's always about God with you guys. Use God to justify whatever position is convenient. The audience gasped. That crossed a line. Mark pointed at Joy. Now wait just a minute. Don't you dare mock my faith. That's completely out of line. I'm not mocking anything, Joy said defensively. I'm questioning how convenient it is that your religious beliefs just happen to align with a political agenda that wants to control what women do, who people can love, and that is such bullshit, Joy. And you know it, Mark interrupted, his Boston accent getting thicker as he got angrier. You're twisting everything I believe to fit your narrative. I don't want to control anybody. I believe in personal responsibility. I believe in strong families. I believe in hard work. Those aren't radical ideas. Joy wasn't backing down. Personal responsibility? That's rich, coming from someone who had a criminal record as a teenager. Assault charges, right? How's that for personal responsibility? The studio went dead silent. The other hosts looked absolutely shocked. That was a low blow, and everyone knew it. Mark's face went from red to almost purple. Are you seriously bringing up stuff I did when I was a kid? I was 16 years old, Joy. I've spent my entire adult life trying to make up for the mistakes I made. I've talked about it openly. I've apologized. I've worked to be a better person. What more do you want from me? I want you to admit that maybe, just maybe, your views are outdated and harmful, Joy said, leaning forward. You parade around as this family man, this religious guy, but you support politicians who want to strip away rights from people. How is that being a good person? Mark stood up from the couch. You know what? I don't have to sit here and listen to this crap. I came here as a guest, and you're treating me like I'm some kind of criminal because I don't think the exact same way you do. Sit down, Mark, Joy said. We're not done here. Oh, we're done, Mark said, his voice hard. We're absolutely done. You can't have a conversation with someone like you because you don't want a conversation. You want a lecture. You want to tell everyone how they should think and feel. One of the producers came onto the set, trying to calm things down, but Mark waved him off. Joy stood up too now. That's right. Walk away. That's what people do when they can't defend their positions. Run away. Mark turned back around. I'm not running from anything. I just have better things to do than waste my time with someone who's already made up their mind about me before I even sat down. I made up my mind based on what comes out of your mouth, Joy shot back. You can't handle being challenged. You celebrities think you can just say whatever you want and nobody's going to push back. Challenge me all you want, Mark said, his voice getting louder. But don't attack my faith. Don't bring up my past mistakes like you're perfect. Don't sit there on your high horse and act like you have the moral authority to judge me. I'm not judging you, Joy insisted. I'm holding you accountable. No, you're being a bully, Mark said. And you could see he really meant it. You're using your platform to try to embarrass me because I don't fit into your little box of what a Hollywood actor should believe. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. Some people were recording on their phones. The other host sat frozen, not knowing what to do. Joy's face was flushed now too. A bully? I'm a bully for asking you legitimate questions about your public statements? They weren't questions, Joy. They were attacks, Mark said. There's a difference between having a discussion and what you're doing right now. Oh, please, Joy scoffed. You guys love to play the victim card. Oh, poor me. Someone questioned my beliefs. Give me a break. When you're a public figure making public statements, you open yourself up to criticism. Criticism is fine, Mark said, grabbing his jacket from the back of the couch. But this isn't criticism. This is a hit job. You brought me here under false pretenses. Nobody brought you here under false anything, Joy argued. You knew this was a talk show where we discuss current events and different viewpoints. Yeah, but I didn't know you were going to try to crucify me for being Catholic, Mark said. I didn't know you were going to throw my teenage mistakes in my face like I haven't spent 30 years trying to be a better man. Joy crossed her arms. If you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen. This isn't heat, Joy. This is disrespect, Mark said, and his voice got quieter now, which somehow made it even more intense. I've done nothing but try to be honest about who I am. I've never claimed to be perfect. I've never said my way is the only way. But you can't even have a civil conversation with someone who thinks differently than you do. I'm perfectly civil, Joy said. You're the one throwing a tantrum and storming off the set. I'm not throwing a tantrum, Mark said, his voice rising again. I'm standing up for myself, something you clearly have a problem with when it doesn't go your way. One of the other hosts finally found her voice. Maybe we should all just take a breath and… No, Mark cut her off, but gently. I appreciate you trying to keep the peace, but there's no peace to keep here. Joy made it clear what she thinks of me the second I sat down. This whole thing was a setup. It wasn't a setup, Joy protested. You're being paranoid. Paranoid? Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. You literally brought up my criminal record from when I was a teenager. How is that not a setup? What does that have to do with my new movie? What does that have to do with anything we were supposed to be talking about? Joy didn't have a good answer for that. She just stared at him. That's what I thought, Mark said. You wanted drama. You wanted to create a moment. Well, congratulations, you got it. But you lost a guest. And you lost respect. I don't need respect from someone who supports policies that hurt people. Joy shot back. And that's when Mark really lost it. What policies, Joy? He shouted. What specific policies are you talking about? You keep making these vague accusations without actually saying anything concrete. You want to have this fight? Let's have it. Tell me exactly what I've done that's so terrible. The producer was back on set now, talking urgently into his headset. The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear. The audience was completely silent, watching this whole thing unfold like a car crash they couldn't look away from. Joy's voice got louder too. You support politicians who want to overturn women's rights. You support people who don't believe in climate change. I never said any of that, Mark yelled. You're making assumptions based on the fact that I'm Catholic and I have traditional values. That's not the same thing as supporting specific politicians or policies. You're putting me in a box that I don't fit in. Then what do you support? Joy demanded. Tell us right now. Do you support a woman's right to choose? Mark threw his hands up. That's none of your damn business, Joy. My personal beliefs about complex moral issues aren't entertainment for your show. You made them public when you started talking about them publicly. Joy countered. I talked about my faith, Mark said. I talked about how I try to live my life. That's not the same as endorsing specific political positions on every issue under the Sunday. It's exactly the same, Joy insisted. You can't separate the two. Yes, you can, Mark argued. I can believe something personally without thinking it should be forced on everyone else. That's called nuance, Joy. That's called living in a complex world where not everything is black and white. That's called being a coward, Joy said. The audience gasped again. That was another line crossed. Mark's voice got very quiet and very dangerous. What did you just call me? I called you a coward, Joy repeated, not backing down. You want to have your traditional values and your conservative beliefs, but you don't want to face the consequences of those beliefs. You want to play both sides. I'm not playing anything, Mark said through gritted teeth, and I'm not a coward. I've been very upfront about who I am and what I believe. Just because I don't fit neatly into your political categories doesn't make me a coward. Then why won't you answer the questions? Joy pressed. Because they're trap questions, Mark exploded. Every question you've asked has been designed to make me look bad no matter how I answer. If I say yes, half your audience will hate me. If I say no, the other half will hate me. And you know that. That's why you're doing this. Joy smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. So, you admit you're afraid of backlash. I'm not afraid of anything, Mark said. I'm just not going to play your game. I'm not going to let you turn me into a political punching bag for your entertainment. This isn't entertainment, Joy said. This is accountability. No, it's a circus, Mark said, looking around the studio. And you're the ringmaster. You don't care about having real conversations or understanding different perspectives. You just want to score points and make headlines. And you don't? Joy challenged. You think you're here out of the goodness of your heart? You're here to promote your movie. You're here for publicity. Don't act like you're above all this. I never said I was above anything, Mark said. But at least I'm honest about why I'm here. You pretended this was going to be a normal interview, and instead, you ambushed me. I asked you questions, Joy said. If that feels like an ambush, maybe you should examine why your positions are so hard to defend. Mark stared at her for a long moment. You could see him trying to decide whether to keep fighting or just leave. The whole studio held its breath. "You know what the sad thing is, Joy," Mark finally said, his voice tired now. "We probably agree on more things than we disagree on. But you're so caught up in this us versus them mentality that you can't even see that. You can't have a conversation with someone without making them your enemy." "I'm not making you my enemy," Joy said. "I'm questioning your values." "My values are fine," Mark said. "My values are about treating people with respect, working hard, taking care of my family, and trying to be a good person. If you have a problem with that, that's on you, not me." "But what about—" Joy started. "No," Mark cut her off. "I'm done. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with your questions, and I'm done with this show. You wanted to make an example out of me. And instead, you showed everyone exactly who you are." "And who am I?" Joy asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're someone who can't tolerate anyone who thinks differently than you do," Mark said simply. "You're someone who uses their platform to bully people instead of having real discussions. And you're someone I don't need to waste another second of my time on." He started walking toward the exit. Joy called after him. "That's right. Run away. Just like I said you would." Mark stopped and turned around one more time. "I'm not running, Joy. I'm choosing not to participate in your toxic game anymore. There's a difference. The only thing toxic here is your refusal to be honest about your beliefs," Joy said. "I've been nothing but honest," Mark said. "You just don't like what you're hearing. And that's your problem to deal with, not mine. If you leave now, you're never welcome back on this show," Joy threatened. Mark laughed. "You say that like it's a punishment. Trust me, Joy. Not coming back here is the best thing that could happen to me." The other hosts were trying to signal to Joy to stop, to let it go, but she wouldn't. "You're making a huge mistake," Joy said. "Walking off this show is going to make you look terrible." "I don't care how I look," Mark said. "I care about how I feel. And I feel like I've wasted enough time here. I came to talk about a movie, and you turned it into a political circus. That's on you." "Everything is political," Joy argued. "You can't escape that." "Maybe not," Mark said. "But I can escape this conversation. And I'm choosing to do that right now." He turned and walked off the set. You could hear his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. The camera stayed on Joy, who looked angry and vindicated at the same time. "Well," Joy said to the camera, "I guess we know where Mark Wahlberg really stands now. Can't handle a few tough questions." But you could tell even she knew she'd gone too far. The other hosts looked uncomfortable. The audience didn't know whether to clap or not. Most people just sat there in shocked silence. Behind the scenes, you could hear some commotion as Mark left the building. Someone tried to stop him to talk, but he kept walking. He got to the parking lot, got in his car, and drove away. Back in the studio, Joy tried to move on to the next segment, but the energy was completely off. Everyone was still processing what had just happened. The producers were scrambling, trying to figure out how to handle the situation. One of the other hosts finally spoke up. "That was intense." "It was necessary," Joy said, but her voice didn't sound as confident as before. "Was it, though?" another host asked quietly. "I mean, he came here as a guest. He came here as a public figure with public positions," Joy defended herself. "We have a responsibility to ask hard questions." "There's asking hard questions, and then there's what just happened," the first host said. Joy got defensive. "What are you saying? That I was too hard on him?" The hosts exchanged glances. Nobody wanted to say it directly, but the answer was obvious. "Look," Joy said, "if he can't handle being challenged on his beliefs, that's his problem. We're not here to make celebrities feel comfortable. We're here to have real conversations." "That didn't feel like a conversation," one of the hosts said bravely. "It felt like an interrogation." Joy's face got red again. "So now you're all turning on me too? Great, just great." "Nobody's turning on you," another host said carefully. "We're just saying maybe it got a little out of hand." "It got out of hand when he refused to answer basic questions about his values," Joy insisted. But even as she said it, you could tell she was replaying the confrontation in her head, wondering if maybe she had pushed too hard, too fast. The show went to commercial break, and during that time, you could see Joy and the producers having a heated discussion off camera. Arms were waving, voices were raised, fingers were pointed. Whatever was being said, it wasn't good. When they came back from commercial, Joy had composed herself a bit, but the mood was still tense. She tried to make a joke about the situation, but it fell flat. The audience gave a weak, uncomfortable laugh. "Well, that's live television for you," Joy said, trying to sound casual. "Sometimes things get heated. That's what happens when you have real conversations about real issues." But nobody was buying it. The conversation had crossed a line from passionate debate into personal attack, and everyone who watched it knew that. For the rest of the show, Joy seemed distracted. The other hosts tried to pick up the energy, but it was impossible. The Mark Wahlberg confrontation had overshadowed everything else. And somewhere out there, Mark was probably telling his friends and family about what had just happened, about how he'd tried to have a civil conversation and instead got attacked for his beliefs. The whole thing was a mess. A complete and total mess that could have been avoided if there had been just a little more respect, a little more willingness to listen, and a little less need to be right. But that's not what happened. What happened was a confrontation that went from zero to explosive in record time, ending with one of Hollywood's biggest stars walking off the set of one of daytime TV's most popular shows. And all of it happened in just 47 seconds, from the moment that first challenging question was asked to the moment Mark decided he'd had enough.